Hello everyone. I have a quick one for you today. This is a Dodge Charger Mark III sent in by Adam. This is modeled on a real car, a prototype built in 1968. Matchbox did a great job capturing its likeness, even down to the rear flares the prototype had. I'll leave a link below to a slideshow showcasing this car if you're interested in seeing more of it. I'll be customizing this car to look like the actual car, though I will be modernizing certain aspects just for personal aesthetics. The main purpose for this video is to test out my new Spectraflame paint method, and this seemed like the perfect car to try it out on. As one has to do, I'll take the car apart by drilling out the post. Lesney created two paint schemes for this car. One is a conservative dark red and seems to be representing the real car, and the second is this lime green with a bright red base, probably painted to catch the eye of younger kids. I assume this car came out in the early 70s. The Superfast line was designed to compete with Mattel's new Hot Wheels that came out in 1968. It took some time for Lesney to transition to the new wire axles. During this time they produced what are called today transition cars. These were cars that originally had regular wheels but were modified to accept the new wire axles. Cars with the new axles were called Superfast cars. Anyway, this is not a transition car, but I bring them up as it is an interesting time in Lesney's history, and because transition cars are typically more valuable. One of the things I don't really like about this car is the windshield. Normally a design like this would have some tabs or a flange in the front that would tuck between the dash and the hood of the car. Since there's not a lot of room, they couldn't use anything to hold the front of the windshield in place. As such, there's a gap between the windshield and the frame of the window that can be seen in certain angles. It's not a big deal, but will make things difficult later when I need to glue it back in. So after the car is completely disassembled, I can spray down the body and base with aircraft paint stripper to remove the paint. The easiest way to do this is to spray the car, wait about 5 minutes for the paint to peel up, and then brush it off with an old toothbrush. After this, I can wash it off with some soap and water. After it dries, I'll go over the body with a brass brush to be sure all the paint residue is removed, and then start making a few modifications. Specifically, I want to put some larger wheels in the back, and to do this I need to make some room for them in the wheel wells. I do this using a Dremel and a small barrel sander. The wheels are very close to fitting, so I don't need to remove too much material. The main goal is to allow the back wheels to still roll after they've been installed in the car. While adding the larger wheels will slightly raise the back, I also want to add in some small brass tubing to lower the front. If you go back and look at the original car's wheels, you'll notice that the car's front end seems to point up, and there's quite a bit of gap between the top of the front wheels and the body of the car. This is due to these cars having real suspensions, and you need that space to allow for wheel movement. I don't think Adam plans to play with this car, so I'll go with what looks good instead of what works well for the suspension. The tubing is cut into length with a Dremel cutoff wheel and then glued into place using the plastic suspension as a guide. I also like using a small wire that goes through the tubing as another visual guide to be sure that I'm gluing the tube in straight. After the glue dries, I can remove the wire. Now I'm going to turn my attention back to the body. The metal on this car is in good shape, so not much sanding is required. Most of the sanding is just to remove any oxidation on the surface. I'll first start with some 400 grit and then move to some 600 and then finally 1000 grit, which gets me to this point. After that, I'll wash the body off in some degreaser to remove any oils and then plate the body in zinc. The zinc is only used here to give the metal a uniform brightness. After 15 minutes at 0.6 volts, I will remove the car and wash it off with some dish soap and allow it to dry. Then I'll go over the zinc and polish it with some 4/0 steel wool. After the steel wool, I'll move to a polishing wheel and some polishing compound to get as close to a mirror shine as I can get. Now it's time to start the new painting process. What I'll be doing is airbrushing on a super thin layer of this base coat metal flake sold by the Redline shop. I'll leave a link below. I'm only applying enough of the base coat to remove all the polishing scratches in the metal. The reason I'm doing this is because the polished surface, while it looks great with Spectraflame on top, is not all that original. This is because original cars were not polished and instead were plated in zinc in a special way that formed very small zinc crystals. These zinc crystals have facets just like a diamond and are very small to see. The end result is a metal surface that is shiny but not mirrored. The trick, so to speak, has been to find a way to reproduce this faceted surface artificially and thus come closer to the original look of the unaltered cars. This method I'm using now gets as close to this look as I've ever gotten. If you look at the car right after the metal flake was applied, it looks very dulled down from the mirrored surface it had before. But here's where things get interesting. As long as the metal flake layer is extremely thin, the new top layer of Spectraflame will cause the metal flake to go partially translucent, giving you back, at least to some extent, the mirrored look with the faceted surface on top. So in a way, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. Alright, so now it's time to paint the base. The original car was all one color, but looking at some of the pictures, the bottom half of the car was in dark shadow. I kind of like this look and decided to paint the base in black acrylic primer to replicate the pictures. Once it's dried, I painted over it with some Tester's matte clear coat. This would protect the black paint, but more importantly give the black a matte look to contrast the shiny red Spectraflame. With the base painted, I can go about installing the rear wheels. I had to do this part off camera as it's extremely difficult to do, and I kept feeling like I was going to break the plastic axle holder, but eventually I did get it in without damaging anything. I forgot to switch to white walls around, so I can do that now. The car didn't look bad with white walls, but it also didn't look as good as when I had the black walls on them. To install the front wheels, I'll first need to cut the axle in half with some wire cutters. This will give me 2 axle halves that I can then glue into the small brass tube I installed earlier. Once both halves are installed, I will set the base aside to allow the glue to set up. The interior plastic is in good shape, it's just very dirty, so I'll clean it with some dish soap and a toothbrush. I thought about detailing it out, but really after looking at it, there's not much really I can do to the interior as it's devoid of any real details to paint, so I decided to leave it be. The windshield was also in pretty good shape. I decided to just go over it with some Meguiar's Plastex polish to clean it up and bring back the original shine. I then washed it with some soap and water and then glued it back into place with some super glue, taking care to get the alignment right, or as good as I could get it given there's not really any registration marks or anything to go off of. With the window installed, it was time to put this car back together. So again, the main purpose of this video was to test out and tweak the new painting process. As always, I'm very curious of what your thoughts are about it. Do you see any issues or problems that I might be missing? Do you like the way it looks or not? If not, why? I won't be doing all of my future cars this way, as zinc plating by itself is a very close approximation of the car's original look. What I really like about this technique is its ability to hide imperfections in the metal surface. It can't hide things as well as sanding and priming, but it's not too far from that. I believe, but we'll need to check with John over at the Redline shop, that this base coat can also be mixed with the Spectraflame paint and then airbrushed on. That won't give the same effect here, but it would make an easy metal flake paint for other projects. Anyway, would love to hear your thoughts below. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.